Amen. But I want to initiate a new sermon series called The 5 T's of Stewardship. We've been inching at this over the last couple of months, but I think it's the moment now that we're right for it. The 5 T's of Stewardship. And this is part 1. And in part 1, we're going to deal with your time and your trust. We're going to deal with your time and your trust. And this morning, our word comes from Ecclesiastes chapter 3. Ecclesiastes chapter 3. All the way back in the Old Testament. Ecclesiastes chapter 3. According to the word of God, it says this: For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to eat, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to cast away. A time to tear, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time to war, and a time for peace. For everything there's a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. I want to encourage you to think about stewardship and your life as a series of cycles. As a series of cycles. There is the mega, the cycle of life. But then there's the micro. In terms of what we do on a monthly basis, what we do on a weekly basis, what we do on a daily basis. So I pray that this series will help to give you some action steps towards both spiritual but also practical maturity, regardless of how young or how old you may be. Think about what you did in your last 24 hours. Think about what you did in your last 24 hours. What did you do in your last 24 hours? And how did that reveal your priorities of life? In your last 24 hours, what did you do? And how does that reveal your priorities of life? Did you spend time with those who you say are most important to you? Did you guard your relationships based on your priorities? Did you spend time in relationships or those things that are priorities to you in the last 24 hours? What about the week? Let's water down the week. How did you spend your time in the last week? We can often say, well, I have to go to work and I have to do these things. But in many ways, they're pointing a blame and using your finger to point. Because those are decisions that you make. How did you spend your last 24 hours? Your last week? Where did you allocate your time? Now, if you had the opportunity to revisit and recreate your last 24 hours, what would you do differently? What would you do differently according to the priorities that you set in your life? If you had a chance to reset or recalibrate or recreate the last 24 hours, the last week of your life, what would you do differently? I argue that many of us don't take time to reflect on those things that are important. And in not taking the time to reflect as we progress in life, we build up things that create resentment as opposed to healing. If you reflect over your last 24, then your next 24 you have an opportunity to fix. If you reflect over your last week, then in your coming week, you have an opportunity to correct. You have an opportunity to reprioritize, to reestablish relationships, to re-go after those responsibilities that you had. You also have a chance to cut out some of the foolishness, to cut out some of the foolish people, to cut out some of the foolish situations. Life is a series of cycles. We have an annual calendar such that we know that every year, Thanksgiving is going to come in November, and Christmas is going to come in December, and there's a new year in January. We have a Christian calendar, liturgical calendar, where we know that the season leading up to Christmas is called Advent. And then we get Christmas season, the birth of Christ. And then the season leading up to the Easter situation, Holy Week, is called Lent. These are repetitive cycles in life. And those of and disciples. But your life is the same way. And have you ever thought about what is our most productive season in life? What are the most important times during the week when I'm really productive and on my toes? What are those most productive moments during the day when I know that during the day, between this hour and this hour, this is the moment where I know I am the most productive? And how do I allocate those times? But then again, in the last 24, where are those moments where you spent with God? And in the last week, where are those moments that you spent with God? If God is a priority in our life, then we should be able to track the time spent with God. A wise person often said that the we can tell reflectively based on what's important to you, based on where you spend your time and your money. Based on an assessment of the past week where you spent your time and money is a recalibration of what your priorities are. Now again, I want to move money to the end. That's part 3. But I do want to talk about your time. Many of us are unfulfilled because of our usage of time. Everybody's operating on a clock. There's only 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. We know the aggregate of minutes and the aggregate of seconds in that time. And many of us have a tendency to think, if I only had more time. But then when you take an assessment of how you're using your time, you get to see pockets and windows of unproductivity and windows of waste and windows of space. I would argue that one of the most important things you can do with your time is to get adequate sleep. And then after adequate sleep, adequate nutrition. And then from adequate sleep to adequate nutrition, then adequate time with God. And then from adequate sleep and nutrition, time with God and time with loved ones, family. And then from there, we got this JOB thing that we need to do to pay the BILLS, right? That's practical. That's practical. That's practical. But we can orchestrate that in a way where our most important things occur first. Now understand what I'm saying. That may mean that instead of going to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning, you need to get to bed at 11 p.m. so that you can get up at 5 a.m. so that you can do the things that you need to do before you have to go to that JOP. Understand what I'm saying? There are ramifications here. There are things that we need to fit in. I'm aware of it. I'm very practical, very practical. But the point is, if you're not sleeping and you're not appropriately taking good nutrition, then even in those waking moments, you're not at your maximum capacity. You're not operating in an effective or efficient manner. I talk to my college students too. Because believe it or not, man, hear me say this, you can study less and sleep more and do better in your classes. Test it, try it, check it out. You can sleep more and study less and do more, do better in your classes. Why is that? Because if you sleep more and study less, creating less stress, then your mind and your brain is able to operate at maximum capability, and you begin to realize the stuff that you learn in class, which you're supposed to regurgitate on the test, you'll remember it better. Trust me on this. Matter of fact, accept the challenge. Just try. Sleep more. Study less. I know, it's counterintuitive. Let me move forward because you don't want to hear it. Our relationships are based on our priorities. Look at this one. We work all day and all night. We go to work and we work hard and we come home and bring our work with us. And we work hard and we're trying to get the best employee award. And the job doesn't take that for account. So we come home and we think that our families are going to be so proud of us because you're such a good employee. When the exact opposite happens. Family mad at us because we spend more time there my own foot in it, so I'm going to say ouch to myself and keep it. The realization is this, that how you use your time is stewardship, because it is God who gives us the time anyway. There's a season, there's a time to live, and there's a time to die. But for me, while I'm living, I want the things that I do while I live to be a living testimony of how good God is to me. So for me, the time that I use, I pray that I smile more than I frown. I pray that I laugh more than I cry. I pray that in my waking moments that I am happy more than I am sad. Sometimes you don't have an opportunity to control it, but God knows that if I can control that, I'm going to make a decision to be happy, as opposed to saying, I'm going to make a decision to smile, as opposed to frown. How are you using your time? Are you praying? Are you spending time praying? And the old school model is that you, in your house, you take a little closet and you put together your prayer closet, but that's old school. That's old school. I'm the kind of person, let me get up in the shower, and after I sing a song and sing myself happy, I just want to thank God. And I know somebody else needs to use the shower, but I'm going to take 5 more minutes in my shower because I need to spend some time alone with God. Or I'm in the car and I know everybody's upset about the same 20 songs every hour on the radio. So turn the radio off, and while you're driving to work, you got that hour-long commute. Why don't you spend some time with God even there in the car? And I do this, I walk into a meeting and I know it's going to be a contentious meeting and somebody's upset about me because I'm not the standard type of traditional purpose. So I walk in with my iPhone and I'll text myself something. And I will text myself and I'll say smile because God is watching. And every moment in that meeting when I know something's about to pop off, and you know how you get a little heart palpitation, you know what's going on, I pull out my cell phone and act like somebody just texted me. I look at it and it says smile, God is watching. I say, God is watching. Now they think I'm crazy because I'm up in the meeting laughing at myself. But you know what? You can think I'm crazy. It's all right. Because I'm happy. Because I choose to be happy. I choose to spend my time being happy, not depressed. Being happy, not stressed. Being happy. It's even, for some of us, it's even difficult to set aside 1 hour on Sunday. Just to come from 12:30 to 1:30. Because you got to deal with traffic, you got to get up, and you got to figure out what you're going to wear, and you don't know where you're going to park, and we can make excuses just to come and enjoy one another 1 hour a week. We can make all excuses. Then I ain't got no loose change, so I can't come because they're going to try to dig in my pocket and get a little tithe and offering. But the point is, how are you using your time? God gives you time. How are you using it? But then that's not it. God also trusts that as He gives you time, that you're going to use it appropriately. This is a difficult concept. God trusts you, that God created you for a specific purpose, that God put you on the planet at this particular time for a particular reason. You wasn't meant to be no 19th century person, no matter what you thought. God created you as a 20th and 21st century person. So there's a reason why God put you on the planet right now, as opposed to before or after. And God is trusting you to manage